Hello everyone, I hope your Socratic seminar went great yesterday. I'm going to kind of give some instructions on what's going on today, and then I'm going to do a lecture, and then you guys will have a little assignment at the end of the hour. But today's lecture is super important. It's over a whole new concept. We're now starting a whole new unit, and that's titled Imperialism. And I'll talk more about why that's important later. But as I'm talking about imperialism today, you guys are going to be filling out this graffiti notes sheet. I've printed a whole bunch out, and I have them on my desk, and Mr. Mullen has them. So he will either have already passed them out, or we'll be passing those out to you guys after the instructions are done. So same type of graffiti notes as normal. You know, you guys should focus more on symbols and visuals and not as much on words and writing everything down, anything like that. You guys are summarizing with visuals. So when I go to grade this, if majority of the paper is words, then you're not going to get a very good grade. I need to look at this and see the majority of the paper is symbols, visuals, things like that. So I just have it broken up into sections, and I think it'll be really easy once you listen to the lecture. This lecture's not as long as my other lectures, and just kind of an introductory to what the concept of imperialism is. So you guys can draw some stuff up here. There's going to be 4 different types of control that countries impose on other countries, and then there are 5 motives for why countries would want to imperialize. So you guys are filling that out as I am lecturing over Western imperialism. So hopefully that makes sense, and everyone needs to get one of those. So if you need to pause the video and hand that out, I would do that now. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and get going with the lecture. So let me get this into full screen here. All right, Western imperialism. So this unit is so important. This unit builds us upon into World War I. So when talking about World War I told you guys there was 4 major causes of World War I. And one of those causes was nationalism. Another one of those causes is imperialism. So we're going to have a whole unit on it. And there's a whole unit on imperialism next year in U.S. history. So it's very, very important today that you guys understand what I'm talking about and that you do not tune me out as I am talking through this video lecture today. It's really important that you are tuned in and understand. I will expect you to understand this content when I come back to school on Monday. So let's talk about Western imperialism. First of all, what is imperialism? Okay, simply in one statement, imperialism is when one country is trying to take over another country. Okay, that's it. One country takes over another country. The official thing I have here is when one country takes control of another country. So put their power into place, things like that. They might control the other country's government, trade, culture, things of that nature. But essentially there is a time period from 1870, which you notice that's right around after Germany forms its empire, but 1870 to 1914, where countries are imposing their control on other countries. And you can probably guess the bigger, stronger countries are imposing their control on the weaker countries and gaining more territory. Now we're going to talk about why countries would do this and what type of control that would happen. But you should know 1870 to 1914. Maybe you could guess why we go up till 1914, and that's because there ends up being this world conflict, World War I. So this is all just building and building and building till we get to 1914. So that's the magic year that we are working towards. So imperialism, when one country takes over another country. That's it. That's what you need to know. That's the basics of it. So that is a vocabulary word you have to understand. And it's going to be assumed that you understand that when you go to United States history next year. We're not going to spend weeks reviewing what imperialism is. You're going to be expected to know it when we talk about America. So make sure we're tuning in. So imperialism, when one country takes over another country. Now, by 1914, the great powers of Europe. So when you think of the great powers, hopefully things like Great Britain is popping into your mind. Germany is popping into your mind. France, Russia, Spain, Italy. Not Italy, kind of, but, you know, those other ones I mentioned are notably the great powers of Europe. Then also 2 other countries, Japan and the United States. Yep, we're starting to come to the stage now. We're not quite there, but we're getting there. But by the 1914, those countries basically controlled the entire world. Seriously. They almost controlled the entire world. Like the entire continent of Africa, going to be conquered by European countries. Asia, pretty much conquered by European countries. South America, they are going to have some revolutions and stuff. Central America is a little bit different. There's going to be some United States influence within that area. Different island chains and stuff like that are going to be influenced. But essentially, Australia is controlled by another country. But essentially, by 1914, the powerhouse European countries, Japan and the United States, control the entire world, which is crazy to think. So in the beginning, it's not like these countries just like set out and said, hey, we're going to go take over other countries. Like, let's go do this. Essentially, it began with like merchants and wanting trade and explorers visiting these areas and things like that. And most of the time, those people weren't welcomed. The native tribes and whatnot did not want the Europeans or the white men on these lands, and a lot of times wanted to kick them out. But soldiers would arrive to protect its people, which ended kind of in conflict, and things kind of escalate from there. And then the country is going to oppose its control over the tribes and all those kind of things. So we did not have the intention to imperialize. When I say we, I'm meaning Europe, Japan, and the United States did not come out with the intention to imperialize. It just kind of ended up happening that way. But yeah, so people did resist Europeans coming into these lands and tried to prevent them from taking over, but we're not successful. The European countries are way more powerful. So remember, 1914, buzz year, that's the start of World War I, and that is what we are working towards. Now, when countries take over other countries, there are multiple ways in which they can impose their power upon these countries. And I believe there's 4 different ways that this can happen. So you guys can see your boxes down there. It says types of control. This is what we're working towards now. So one type of way that countries can impose their control over other countries is called a settlement colony. Hey, this means that they're going to send a large amount of people to actually live there. Okay, they're actually trying to settle the area, make the area more prosperous. They're going to create cities and all that kind of stuff within the area. So the picture down here is of Jamestown. So when like the British discovered the New World and discovered Jamestown, they sent Englishmen to go live over there and established Jamestown, and then more and more people went to go live and things like that. Same thing going on in like Brazil, in Mexico and stuff like that. The Spaniards sent a whole bunch of people to go live over there. It's when you actually send people and they want to live there. They're going to create a city. They're placing roots there, and people are actually coming together to create a new community. Sorry. Another example, which you could talk about, I know we don't talk about this much, is Australia. Australia is a settlement colony of Great Britain. If you ever look at Australia's flag, you'll see the Australian or the British flag within the Australian flag. If you ever go down there, there's a lot of British people that live down there as well too. But for a very long time, Australia was a settlement colony of Great Britain. So Great Britain sent a whole bunch of people to go live there. Okay, they're trying to establish cities and colonies and things like that in Australia. So they actually want people to go live over there, like middle-class people, things like that, to go live in Australia to establish a life for themselves. So settlement colonies, they're actually going to settle down and they are going to live there. So that's one type of control that they could have imposed. Another type of control is a dependent colony. They are not wanting to live there. Okay, basically they're going to use this country up for its resources. And so what has to happen is they have to send over a few people in charge. And those people are the ones that kind of control everything and make sure what's happening needs to happen. But they're not going to go like send a whole bunch of families to live there and try to settle down and create new cities and things like that. The most notorious example that I can give you is India. Okay, India had a lot of cotton and salt, and that helped the British textile industry quite a bit. And so Great Britain is not going to go send a whole bunch of people to live in India. The conditions are not ideal. Now they send them to Australia, but they don't really want to send them to India. So instead, they're going to go send like different governors and stuff like that to be in charge of India. Okay, the British control India, but they're not going to have a whole bunch of people living there. Okay, the population is mostly Indians, but they are under the control of the British. Okay, and they're dependent on the British because the British are the ones that tell them what to do because they just send a few rulers. So settlement, you want to settle down, you want to actually live there. Dependent, there's a few rulers in charge, and they are dependent on the country to give them instruction, things like that. So there is a map of India in case you forgot where India was, but India is going to be under the control of Great Britain. You'll notice a lot of countries are under the control of Great Britain. There's a saying that the sun never set on the British Empire, meaning their empire is just so massive. I mean, the sun is always up somewhere because it spans the entire continent, or not continent, the entire world, basically. Okay, so we went over settlement colonies. That should be one of your boxes, and I gave you the example of Australia, people actually going to live there. I now went over dependent colonies, like you just send a few people in charge, things like that, to take control of the country. Another example is a protectorate. Hopefully when you hear the word protectorate, you think of the word protector. Okay, so what happens here is essentially the local ruler is in charge. So I like to use the example of America and Cuba way back when. Okay, way back when America helped Cuba get their independence from Spain. Okay, then Cuba became a protectorate of America. Essentially, there were people in Cuba, Cubans, that were in charge of the government. However, they had to listen to the United States on foreign policy and things like that. And then we would protect Cuba from foreign invaders or anything like that. So in exchange for our protection, they had to listen to what we had to say for foreign policy, and they had to trade resources with us. So there's different examples of Europe and Great Britain and stuff like that. But I think the best example and visual I can give you is America and Cuba. Puerto Rico was also a protectorate of the United States for quite some time. So a protectorate is, there is the small country that has its own people in charge. However, they are protected by a larger country in exchange for resources and foreign affairs influence. So like we said, who Cuba could interact with and trade with and things like that. But then we would protect them and make sure they would not get invaded. So our first example is a settlement colony. It was Australia. Second, I'm so sorry I keep clearing my throat. It's nighttime when I'm recording this, and so drainage stuff. Anyway, so settlement colony was the first one, and that was Australia. The second one was a dependent colony, so that should be in box 2, and that was India. The third one is a protectorate. Okay, remember they're big countries protecting a little country. The little country still has its local ruler in charge like that, but in exchange for our protection, we were getting resources and we had influence in their foreign affairs. So we kind of let them think they have control of themselves, but when it comes down to it, they have to listen to the mother country. So the final one I think is the most interesting one, and hopefully I can give you a really good visual of that, and that is spheres of influence. Basically, a sphere of influence is when you're not going to take over the entire country. You are going to carve out a piece of the pie. Okay, so pretend the country is pie. Okay, and it's a really large country. And so the best example I can use is China. Okay, if you remember, China had the foreign policy of isolationism for years and years and years. Well, they fell behind. They didn't go through the Industrial Revolution. They didn't modernize, industrialize. Then all these European countries come around and they're all using metal ships and things like that. And the Chinese are falling way behind. So the big European countries, now that they're stronger and China's going to come into China and they want access to China's resources and things like that, well, instead of taking over the entire country of China, which is very large, what they're going to do is carve out pieces of pie for themselves or take pieces of pizza. Okay, I like to use the metaphor of a pie. So you can pretend I'm making like a carving signal right now, but they're going to carve out a section, and then that's their section. So in China, like Russia got a piece of the pie, and Great Britain got a piece of the pie, and America got a piece of the pie, and France is going to get a piece of the pie. And so you can see in this political cartoon here, like poor China is like, oh no, And they really can't do anything about it because, like, here you can see, like, Germany's carving out their piece, and Russia's carving out their piece, and England, even Japan is carving out their piece of the pie, and France is over here going to have a piece of the pie as well, too. So a sphere of influence is when you're not taking over an entire country, you're taking over a sphere of the country, and you have influence in that area, and that area is loyal to you. So sphere of influence, piece of the pie, not the whole thing. So, reviewing over all of that, and you will be expected to know all these, especially protectorate and sphere of influence, okay? Settlement colony, they're settling down, establishing cities. Dependent colony, they're just putting some rulers in, and then the country is dependent on them for instructions, but they're basically using them for their resources. A protectorate, the big country protects the little country in exchange for resources and foreign influence over the country, like political power and stuff like that. Finally, then a sphere of influence, countries carve up a big country, everyone gets a little piece of the pie, and have influence in their area. Okay, those are the 4 types of control that countries can impose on other countries. Remember, the big unit is imperialism, countries taking over other countries. So when countries would take over other countries, like when Great Britain would go take over places in Africa, they would impose one of these 4 different types of rule. Same thing when France was doing it, Russia, the United States, Japan, Italy, Belgium, Portugal, and Spain. Any of those countries, when they went and took over smaller countries, they would impose one of these 4 different types of control. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, that was that first part. Now we're going to move on to the second part, which is I think the most interesting part when talking about this is, well, why would countries want to take over other countries anyway? What's the point? Okay, well, why do they feel a need to do that? So there are 5 motives. I call them motives. Motives are reasons. If you don't know what a motive is, it's what drives someone to do something. So a reason for doing something. So we have our 5 motives for imperialism. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's talk about this, and then we're getting on to the motives. So, and this kind of leads into it. So basically, nations started to realize they would get more respect from other countries if they had these colonies. And they were, these colonies seemed as a benefit. Number one, they could get more troops to be a part of their military. So they could have bigger armies. Bigger armies means you're stronger, meaning you can take over other territories. And so because of this, everyone starts building up their armies. Everyone starts building up their navies, especially. You got to travel down to Africa, and you got to travel over to Asia to go take over these places. So they started to build up their navies as well, too, which, old Great Britain's not loving that because they have the largest navy in the world, and now some people are starting to try to push their buttons and don't love that. And then finally, what you start to see is little islands become really, really fierce competition. You wouldn't think little island chains would be that important, but they're used as fueling stations, because boats can't go forever. They have to stop and fuel up and get supplies and stuff like that. I mean, why do you think we have Hawaii? Out there in the Pacific, it's not attached to the main part of the United States. I mean, Hawaii was used as a military base. We know Pearl Harbor is there. And then also there's some resources there as well too, like sugarcane. But yeah, that's the perfect example for the United States. So other countries started taking over the little islands though too, and there was like fierce competition, like who could get to that island first and take it over, because you needed those for fueling stations. So that kind of leads us then, by 1914, you start to see bitter rivalries. Like I want you to think like if there was something like 2 different people want, okay, and you're competing over it, and like whoever wins the fight gets the prize. You can imagine there's a lot of competition going on between countries, and because of that competition, it's creating a lot of rivals between countries, which is just fueling the fire for a world conflict to occur by 1914. Okay, you can imagine if people are trying to get more powerful, and there's only so much land in the world, right? There's only so much land. And piece by piece, after all that land is being grabbed by other countries, you're going to see countries fight over that territory, especially countries that have a lot of resources like diamonds and gold and stuff like that. So you can also see by 1914, nations had colonies all over the world. Once again, they have massive armies and massive navies. And then also the colonized people didn't necessarily like the bigger countries as well too. And so there's a lot of hatred within the colonized people with the increase of military and with the increase of colonies and rivalry and competition between countries. It is going to lead to a world conflict. Okay, and that's why this unit is so important, is that you guys need to see, first of all, like, the biggest thing I want you to see is how did by the Europeans and Japan and the United States taking over these different parts of the world, how did that impact those countries? I mean, if you want to know why Africa is so poor, you're going to learn a lot within this unit. But not only looking at how it affected the people that was taken over, but how did it affect the world and the conflict that's going to then come soon after. And so hopefully we're able to make connections to why World War I is then going to begin. So now we're moving on to those motives. There's 5 of them, and let's go through those motives. I bet if you talk to your partner right now or anything like that, I bet you could guess a few. Okay, and just thinking in your mind what you guys come up with. I'm sure a lot of you, and I've mentioned it as well too, a lot of you guys are thinking, ooh, economic. And for economic, I'm referring to money. Hey, yes, countries want to make money off of other countries. Hey, they're going to expand their foreign trade and their control when they take over those other countries, and they get to use up all the resources in those other countries. And you know what, guys? Africa is full of resources. Prior to this, people really hadn't been to the inner part of the continent of Africa. That's where all the, gold and diamonds and things like that is in that area. So they're going to make a lot of resources off of that. So that's the acquiring raw materials, and then also, sadly, cheap labor as well too. Being able to use Africans to mine and stuff like that within Africa. And they're competing for investments and resources. One of the biggest resources that is discovered in Africa, where people are going to make so much money, is the diamond trade. Okay, and Great Britain's going to luck out with that, but especially in South Africa and the southern part of the African continent, there's a whole bunch of diamonds. They're also going to find a lot of gold, rubber, timber, all those different types of resources. So economic is one of those big things why people wanted to make money. They wanted to get into new markets and have people, more consumers, buy their products and things like that. So that's one of the big ideas there. Same thing with India. India had a lot of resources, and Great Britain is going to use India for those resources. So when we do these 5 motives, I know you're going to think I'm silly, but you're just going to have to deal with it and kind of buy into it. But I give you guys hand actions because I think it's a really good way for you guys to remember what the 5 motives are. And I am going to expect you to know these 5 motives when we take a quiz. And it is going to be an essay quiz later on at the end of this unit. So here you can see me being silly and doing the symbol for economic. So I'm doing the symbol with my hands, the money symbol. And that is the symbol for economic. And I promise you, you may think I'm dumb. Okay, and you're like, oh my gosh, she looks so silly. But I see kids do these hand symbols when we do the quiz over imperialism. And if it's going to help you remember why countries take over other countries, then we're going to be doing it. So, and I've seen that it's helped kids. So hopefully just buy into it with me. I will ask you about this on Monday, but the money symbol is for economic. Our second reason why countries would take over other countries is political reasons, I kind of talk about more so power, okay, political or power. And they just want to gain more power. The more countries you take over, the tougher you look and the more influence you have among the world. And so, that just shows you're bigger and better than the other country, and that's increasing competition between other countries. And then also, when your country starts winning all these wars, you gain all this territory, and then it's like, oh yeah, I'm from Great Britain, and we control this, and control this, and control this, and it boosts a little bit of national pride. It's like, heck yes, you keep getting dubs, and your whole country is like, yes, look at us, we're awesome. And so that's essentially, it's fueling nationalism as well too. And we just got done talking about nationalism and that pride in what your country is doing. And so not only is allowing you to gain power, but it's also fueling nationalism as well too, and allows you to compete with other countries. But you also want to expand your territory. If you expand your territory, you have more power. And then also just the fact of exercising military force, because it gives you your prestige among the world. It's like, look how powerful my navy is. And that's exactly what Great Britain was doing. It was like, look how powerful my navy is. We take over everything. And they did. oh my gosh, when I show you the map later on, next week you're going to see Great Britain basically took over everything, but you gain that prestige and that reputation like, yes, I'm one of the most powerful countries in the world. And so a big reason and influence of people our countries taking over other countries is just that power, that prestige, that pride, and to exercise your military and expand your military. So when anything's talking about like using military force, creating bigger navies, stuff like that, that is dealing with political. So as you can see, my political power symbol is obviously like the tough guy arms, so flexing. But yep, so economic money symbol, okay, power, we're flexing. Our third one is religion. Hey, this one's pretty simple. You know, when we talked about the Protestant Reformation and all that kind of stuff, religion's a big part of people's lives, and they want to spread their religion, whether that's Christianity or Protestantism. But all these European missionaries want to go all, you know, they expanded to Africa, and it's like, ooh, we can get more followers of our faith. Let's go spread our religion to all these Africans. Same thing when they go over to Australia. Same thing when they go over to Asia, and it's like, oh, we can expose them to Christianity and show them Catholicism and show them Protestantism. And so they're able to spread the European values and morals and help educate people within the Christian faith. Also, on a higher note, they did, a lot of these missionaries are wanting to end the slave trade in Africa. So that was a positive of it as well, too. So, number one, economic money symbol. You could see me right now, kind of like dumb, but I'm doing this as I'm lecturing to the computer. But the money symbol. 2, political power, we'd be flexing, okay? And 3, I bet you can guess it, religion, religious. We are going to be doing the praying symbol, okay? That's our third reason why countries would want to take over other countries. These next 2 are pretty basic as well, too. The last one's kind of complicated, but we'll get there. The next one is exploratory. So this is a desire just to see what the heck is out there. Like, we've never been to the inner part of Africa. Like, let's go check it out. What is there? We can conduct scientific research. We can create new medicines. We can create maybe new vaccines or treatments for diseases. Like, let's just go on an adventure and go check it out. Okay? Investigate other cultures. You know, you have a little bit of anthropology, stuff like that. And, you know, how does the other half live and how do other cultures live? So it's just that desire to see what the heck else is out there. This one is not the most popular. If you're looking at the most popular ones, it's the first 3. Exploratory, it's on there because it was done. David Livingstone and Henry Stanley are 2 examples, and we'll talk about those later on. But it is a reason, just not one of the most popular reasons. So we are going to get our binoculars on, and that is our 4th symbol. So number 1, hand symbol, symbol is the money sign. Number 2, political power. We be flexing. Hey, number 3, we're doing our praying symbol for religion. Number 4, we have our binoculars. And finally, our 5th one is ideological. Okay, and this one can be very complicated because it is racist, essentially. And you have to think this was a different time. This is during the 1800s, early 1900s, and this is what the perspective of a lot of people during that time in Europe and in America as well, too. And that belief, and it's known as the white man's burden. Okay, the white man's burden. And their belief was that the white man was superior to everyone else. It's superior to the people in Asia. It's superior to the people in Africa, Central America, etc. But the white man was superior, was the superior race. And everyone else is just uncivilized. Okay, heathen, sullen people. Okay, just uncivilized tribal people, and they just don't know how to live. And it is the belief of the white man's burden that it is the white man's job to civilize these different people that we conquer, because it's our job to help them, okay? Because they don't know how to live. So these uncivilized groups that, you know, we would take over in the Philippines, or we would take over these different African tribes, it is the white man's burden to take them over and show them the way that is more promising. And that is better, to be educated, to speak a certain language, to believe a certain faith. And And so that's the biggest part of ideological, is that you need to remember, is the white man's burden. The white man is superior, and it is the white man's job to civilize these uncivilized groups of people, and these tribal people. So, white man's burden, ideological. I do have a couple other things on there. And also the belief that great nations should have empires, and so they should go take over all these, like they are entitled to go take over all these other countries, and the belief that the strongest nations will survive. And if the strongest nations are going to survive, then the weaker ones will fall. And it's the job of the strongest nations to take over. So, ideological, though, the main piece that you need to understand is the white man's burden. It was a poem written by Rudyard Kipling, the guy who wrote the Jungle Book, I believe. And it's a poem, and it is that the white men are superior, and it is the white man's job and their burden to bear to go civilize these people that have been taken over. So, and so that our last one then, I'm pointing to my head or my mind, because it is a thought during the time that the white men were superior to the uncivilized cultures that they would take over. So, obviously that's a different story today, and we know today that's different, but you have to remember this is the 1870s to 1914, and this was a true belief, okay, and you guys need to realize that and be exposed to what people were believing of the time to understand why some of those choices were being made to go capture these countries and to try to assimilate them to a certain culture, things like that. So they'd educate them, all those kind of things to make them assimilate to their culture, because it was their burden to do so. So there you can see I'm pointing to my mind. Now, I think that is our last slide. It is. So real quick, one more time, there are 5 motives of imperialism. Okay, the first one is economics. We're doing the money symbol. 2 is political power. I'm flexing. 3 is religion, doing the praying symbol. 4 is exploratory. We'll be checking out what's out there, looking for new remedies for diseases. And number 5 is ideological, pointing to our brain, the white man's burden. So that is my lecture today. If you want to pause it at this point, and Mr. Mullen, you make sure they have their name on their papers, and you're going to go ahead and collect that. You can go ahead and pause it, and then I'm going to go ahead and talk about the instructions for the assignment. So, okay, so your assignment in Google Classroom is going to look like this. And Mr. Mullen will have needed to pass out the packet by now. If you haven't, just go ahead and pause it and pass out the packet to them. But you are going to be using this packet here. It looks like this. To do this assignment. So the first thing you need to do is, you can see it has the 5 motives for imperialism. You're going to need to draw a symbol for each one of those motives in those boxes. So like economic, you may put a $sign, or you may put like an actual dollar. Political, you may draw like an arm, or something to be powerful. Religion, you might draw a cross. You can draw whatever the heck you want to. But you are going to put a symbol in each one of those. Then you can see it has like this chart with A, B, C, D, etc. So you're going to look at this chart, and you're going to go back and look at this assignment here. So I didn't want you guys to have to flip back and forth on your computer like I'm having to do right now, so that's why I printed them for you. But you're going to look at this cartoon, so you can see, or this drawing, and you're going to see this is the letter A. So this is for A. And I'm going to analyze what is going on here. So, like if we were analyzing what is going on here, I'm looking, and there's a whole bunch of ladders, and there's buckets being drawn up. It looks like it could be taking place somewhere in Africa, and it looks like they're bringing something from the ground. Probably, if I'm having to guess, they're mining. Okay, they're mining for different resources. So I'm going to go back over to my worksheet, and so I would put those things and describe what I would see. And then, I talked about their mining for resources. That would fit under which of the following? Economic, political, religious, exploratory, or ideological. economic makes the most sense because they're trying to make money off those resources. So I would put whatever symbol I drew for economic there. So if I did a dollar sign, I'd do a dollar sign, and then I put why I chose that motive. I would say I would chose this motive because people are mining for resources and the mother country is probably trying to make money off of those resources. Okay? So that's how you do the worksheet, and you guys are going to be continuing to work on that with whatever time is left today. You can work on a little bit of it over the week, and I would probably suggest that you do. I wouldn't complete it. You are going to have the basically 30 minutes in class on Monday to finish it, and then we're going to go through this together as a class. But you're not going to have enough time to fill it all out when we go over it, and I may not even go over all of it. But I am going to give you 30 minutes of work time on Monday. So you will have that time to work. But that is an example of how to do it. Make sure your name is on there. You can work on it this weekend. And I would suggest you would. Like if you only get 3 things done today, I would maybe do like halfway through the next page and save the other half for school. But so that is what you guys are doing. Our objectives for today to hopefully introduce imperialism and have you understand the 5 motives of imperialism, and we're reinforcing those motives with that activity where you're looking at primary source documents and analyzing what motive of imperialism that would be. So hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully I didn't just talk your ear off and that we are paying attention, but I am going to expect you guys to know all of that on Monday, and so I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. If you have any questions, you can always email me. Otherwise, I will see you on Monday. Bye-bye.